Hello everybody, welcome back to Valley of the Mist Block of the Month. I'm Adriane Ritter.
And I'm Shelley McNeely.
And we are here with the July 2022 Block of the Month. And this is our sample block. It's kind of a spinny star.
Right.
Aren't they all? No. Okay.
Now this is spinny.
Okay. So Shelley is gonna go, number one, go on the Valley of the Mist website to get a copy of the printed instructions with some photos. And these blocks, because it's a summer month, are not, if you're doing them for our drawing at the Guild, they're not due till September.
Okay.
So what fabrics do we need?
Okay, so this year, this is the focus fabric we're using. So if you're going to make blocks and turn them in for the drawing, this is the focus fabric you need to use. But if you aren't using it for the drawing, you can use whatever focus fabric you want. Then we have a white and two colors that coordinate. Of course, this is right on top of my block with the focus fabric. So this is what we're using.
All right, and that's what you're using today.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
So what do we need specifically for this block?
Okay, excuse me. For this block, we need, for the white, we need 4 4 3/4 by 7 3/4 rectangles. And then what we're going to call fabric 2 or coordinating fabric 1, we need 2 4 3/4 by 7 3/4 rectangles. And fabric 3, which is coordinating fabric 2, we also need 2 4 3/4 by 7 3/4 rectangles.
So just to summarize, all those rectangles are the same size.
Right.
There's four whites and 4 coloreds, but the colored, it's 2 different colors.
Right. And then from the focus fabric, which we call focus fabric 4, we need 2 2.5-inch squares, which we'll cut on the diagonal.
Okay, so you're just going to cut these. I haven't done it yet, but you're just going to take and cut those on one diagonal. So you end up with 4 triangles. All right, so the first thing that you need to do is to take your 4 pieces of white fabric and stack them all wrong sides up together. Well, in 2 stacks. You want 2 and 2. And then I want you to take and draw, it's hard to see on here, in just a second I'll show you a little better. You're going to draw a diagonal line from one corner to the other, and you're going to do it 2 different corners. So, oh my goodness, I did the, no I did, okay.
It's confusing.
In my sample block, I did them the same. And so I had to switch 2 of my pieces to this other block.
So that's why we want you have 2 stacks.
2 stacks, yes. Because once you do the next step, it's more confusing. I want you to draw the lines first. Here, let me throw this out of the way. So on this stack, I've drawn from this corner down to the left, from the right to the left, and from here I've drawn from the top left to the bottom right. And I'll tell you, you'll think, oh, I can do this as I'm going, but trust me, because we've done it wrong. Once you start laying them on and making these pieces, you twist them, and so then you think you're drawing them one direction, you're really drawing them another.
Yeah.
Okay. So what we're making, what this block is made with, is one of our new favorite parts that you can make, and it's called a half square rectangle. And half square rectangles are, I think, a little more fun,
right?
But they are a little wasteful of fabric because you have to do that bigger twist. So you're going to draw this line on there, and actually, if you want to make it easy for yourself and you don't want to get out one of those 1/4-inch foots that help you for a half square triangle or half square whatever, you can draw the one line and draw another line right next to it on either side that's a 1/4-inch away, and that's your sewing line. The center line will be your cutting line, and the outer ones will be your sewing line. So this one I did, and I sewed it kind of in a dark thread so it was more visible. But basically, after you get, you take one of your coordinating fabrics and lay it right side up and then take one of these ones that are, you're going to put them right sides together. So now this one's right sides down, and you're going to twist it. So now you're doing like you do with a half square triangle. You're matching that line to the points, but it's a much bigger twist, okay? And I'll tell you, as your pieces, if you have a small rectangle, your wasted fabric is smaller. As it gets bigger, your wasted fabric does get bigger. I'll warn you that. So you're going to lay that on there, pin down on either side, and then you're just going to sew 1/4 inch from either side. And did we tell them to press to the dark? We said press open, I think. Yeah. On this one, it doesn't seem like a lot of points come together, but they do. So we recommend you press open your seams on this one. So you're going to sew this on either side, cut down the middle, and then press open the seams, and then come back, and we're going to talk about we have to do a squaring up of them, and that's probably the hardest part to this block.
Right.
So we're going to we want you to make your 4 half square rectangles. And one thing I didn't mention, because it's not super important, but it does. So if you look at my block and Shelley's block, we deliberately did this. They're spinning in 2 different directions, and you can make it spin in either direction even after you've done your sewing, because the direction it spins depends on which fabric you put in the middle and which one you put to the outside.
Right, because one of the coordinating fabrics make them go one way, and the other one makes it go the other way.
Right. So you're going to. I'm not even sure I said that, but basically, when you've got two diagonal lines going one way on the white fabric, one coordinating fabric goes with that. They go the same direction, and then the other coordinating fabric goes with the other direction.
Yeah.
And
that should be clear, I guess.
Right. And so then, if you are going to be particular about which way it spins, then think about which fabric you want in the middle, and look at our blocks and see where that needs to be to get that.
Right.
I wouldn't worry about it. I think it looks fine if they spin either way, and so you can just make sure they go 2 different directions, and then decide that when we're piecing.
In the written directions, it might be more clear which is which, or I don't know. It is kind of confusing.
Why would it be more clear?
Well, because the way I have it is coordinating fabric 1 usually is the one that's in the center, but
yeah, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Okay. All right, so we'll make those half square rectangles, and we'll be back. All right, so we're back with our 8 half square rectangles.
Right.
All right, so like I said, this is not hard, but it's probably the trickiest part. Okay, so the first thing I want to mention to you, which I mentioned in a prior video, but in this video, this is kind of important that you do this. We want you to take a Sharpie and one of your rulers, and you're going to deface it with this Sharpie. But you're not going to worry, because like we said, all of your marking stuff that's important to make this ruler work is on the bottom, and you're going to write on the top. Okay? Do not write on the bottom, because if you write on a Sharpie on the bottom, it could go on your fabric. We really want you to write on the top. Okay, so we need you to make, so the thing about half square rectangles is to get them the same. It's a little bit of a geometry issue, in that depending on, we gave you a size of fabric, and like normal, if your size is a little bit off, it's not a big deal, because we've allowed for extra. In these half square rectangles, we've definitely allowed for extra. So if you don't have quite 7 3/4, say you only have 7 1/4, it's still going to work, but that's going to change your angle. And we need the angles to be uniform at the end. Mm-hmm. Okay? And not because we're the quilt police, but because it just makes our life easier. We'll say it that way. So now if you look online at instructions on how to make half square rectangles, there's a lot of instructions. But unless they have this one part that we're going to talk about right now, your points have no chance of not being mangled.
Right.
And we don't generally care about points, but let's not go out of our way to make them bad. I mean, we can do that on our own, just sewing. But if we cut them wrong, and most of the instructions online really tell you to trim them wrong. And that has to do with the fact that, like, when you're doing a half square triangle, all of those rules have to do with you knowing a half square triangle is a 45-degree angle. And a half square rectangle, it changes depending on the length of the pieces, right?
Right.
The angle gets, more if it's more or less depending on the length. Mm-hmm. Okay. So to offset this, you're going to take your ruler and you're going to make a little dot. And the first dot's easy. It's just right here in the corner where it comes in 1/4 inch and 1/4 inch, 1/4 and 1/4. Okay. Now, the other dot, you need to bring it back in that 1/4 inch the same way to allow for your seam allowances. And so we had to know what size do our quarter rectangles need to be. And the finished size of these rectangles is 3.5 by 6.5. So you need to come in 1/4 inch from that. So you're going to make another little dot down here in the corner at 3.25 and 6.25. So I came down 6.25 and I came over 3.25 and I made a dot. Now, this is where Shelley and I differ, because I don't think Shelley makes the line.
No, I didn't.
Okay. And that's up to you whether you make the line. But for me, so I drew a line on here also, which is my finished size. So that's at 6.5 and 3.5.
Good idea.
And
I agree
it's
it's a good idea.
super easy, and I'll show you. And so when you make these marks, they're not permanent, because rubbing alcohol, you just put rubbing alcohol in a little white bead and it comes right off. You can see this is, I've done this a bunch, and this is my leftover thing. I'm very frugal. Okay, so now that you've got these marks, you're going to take one of your, and here's the other thing that Shelley always chastises me about in my teaching. I am left-handed, but I was raised to not be left-handed, and as a result, I can do things with both hands, a lot of things, not everything. And I definitely can cut with both hands. So I don't worry about how I position my ruler, because I have a right-handed ruler, and I don't have it over here with me now, but I have a left-handed ruler. So I just cut with whichever one works. I have no preference in cutting. But Shelley's like, Adriane, you're positioning that wrong. People won't be able to cut that because they're right-handed. So I'm sorry if I do that to you. And sometimes you might have to turn it around. So on these rectangles, you're going to have one direction that works. So I'm using this long ruler. I think Shelley uses...
I didn't bring it with me.
She uses a shorter ruler.
I use the 6.5 inch square.
Okay, but so where the dots are depend on which direction your angle is. But here's the trick. They're the same direction if you turn it over. And you can make the cutting on the back side just as easily on the front side.
Yeah. I made 4 dots on my ruler, but you're right. I didn't have to do that.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, it's on the other side, just turn it over. So that's what I did. Okay, so what you need to do is, pretend I have this down on a cutting table, and I have a dot right here and right here. So I need to line up the angle, the diagonal line on this, so that the dot is right on the diagonal. And then, I look and I see, do I have fabric totally under that square that I've drawn, rectangle that I've drawn on my ruler? And if I do, I'm good. And I just need to trim off the 2 exposed corners of however I have it. See right here, I don't have it, because I can see right here, I'm not up enough. I need to go up a little higher.
So really,
look at
sure your fabric is underneath it.
Yeah, and that's what the nice thing about drawing that line is, you can see the whole piece you need. So you would take it and you would trim off here and here, and then you turn it around, line it up again, only now your cut edge should match with that line. If I had cut that, it would match here, and then I would make that other trim.
That you end up with the 3.5 by 6.5.
With the dots will go right on
Right.
your
if you
diagonal.
line up the dots, it should line. If it doesn't line up, you did something wrong. If the dots don't line up on the diagonal.
Yeah, I would double check that you placed the dots right, because if you've used any dimensions close to what we gave you, I mean, it's just 2 points. They should go on that line.
Right.
Okay, so you're going to trim all 8 of these pieces, and so that, like I said, that's the hard part, and that's those written instructions have the spot. So if you're going to make half square rectangles in the future, just keep that in mind. You need to have that line up with a 1/4 inch at the one corner, and then whatever your final size is, come in a 1/4 inch on each, and that's the second dot. So it's an easy calculation.
And what you'll see actually is you have like an 1/8 of an inch that's over from the diagonal showing of one of the fabrics. So it's like the diagonal didn't come right in the corner.
Yeah, it looks like when she means when you finally trim it, you'll look off, but it's allowing for your seam allowances, and so it's actually just perfect. And like we said, that has to do with because the angle has changed, and normally if it's a 45, you're coming in the same on both sides, but on a rectangle you're coming in a different amount, and so you have to just line that up.
And just remember that also, you probably kind of said it, but just to emphasize that all of one color is going to be up or down when you put the ruler on it. It's always the same color that's where the dots line up with your fabric up or down.
Yeah. You shouldn't have, I mean, you're not trying to line up this way.
When you put the ruler on there, you should be able to tell, oh, that doesn't work, so I need to turn the fabric over.
Yeah.
But all of those that are of the same color should work out the same.
Yeah. Okay, so then after we have trimmed those, our next step in this step is really easy. We just want you to take and sew one from each color together. And you need to sew them together. It doesn't really matter, but do it the same. At this point, you haven't really picked which is your inner or which is your outer, but you want to sew a straight line, a long line between a white and one of the coordinating fabrics. So it doesn't matter if I do it this way or if I do it this way.
But it'll be white color, white color.
Yeah. Okay, and so all of them the same. So it's either you're going to sew white to, you're always going to sew white to the same color in this step. Okay, we'll come back and we'll have 4 basically 6.5 inch square units. Okay. All right, so yes, I said something wrong. I'll admit it. Okay, you were making a commitment to which one was going to be the inside.
Like it or not.
Like it or not. So if you haven't sewn them together, then now is a good time to think about which one you want on the inside. But basically, when you sewed these two together, the one that you sewed against the white is going to be the outer point, not in the inside swirl. If that makes. Is that a good way to describe it, Shelley?
The color that's not sewn to anything ends up being in the center.
Yeah. So, sorry about that. Okay. So now we're coming to the part where we put on this little triangle that's going to go in the center, which in technical quilting terms is called a flippy corner. Okay. So now we are very frugal, especially with our focus fabric, because some years we only give you a quarter, a fat quarter.
Right.
This year we gave people a half yard. So if you do it the traditional way, we only told you to cut 2 of these 2.5 inch squares. The traditional method, you would cut 4 of them.
Right.
And Shelley's going to show you, and what you would do is you would lay it on
the corner here, and then you sew it on the diagonal between the 2 points that on the little square. Sew it between those 2 points.
I think you sew it like a little bit in.
Teeny bit in. Just
because and that's because you're going to fold the fabric over, and you need to allow for it to fold over.
And you can actually do it more than a teeny if you want. It's up to you. But just don't go
past the diagonal.
Don't go past the diagonal on that side.
Yeah. So you want to be, if you're going to do it this way, you would sew inside of the diagonal.
Right.
There.
And then you cut off, if you're on the seam, so you have a 1/4 seam, and then you flip it over and press it.
Yeah, so then it would basically flip over and fill in that corner if I folded it diagonally there. And so you make sure that you're a little in from the diagonal.
Right.
Okay. So for this block, the exact size of that center is not super important. And so if you're going to do the traditional flippy corner method, do it the same on all, because you actually get a slightly bigger corner than what we're doing, because we're taking a 1/4 inch off of that. So our method, and I said, Shelley, how do you do it? She goes, I don't have a way I want to tell. So I'll tell my way. And this is what we've talked about in other ones, is that I take that 1/4 inch, that triangle, and I lay them both right sides up, and I pull it back so I'm a 1/2 inch in on this side and a 1/2 inch on this side, and then I lay a ruler right on top of that triangle, and I cut off that corner. And I know 1/2 inch sounds like too much, but what you're making is your aligning edge, not your sewing edge, which you're going to come down a 1/4 inch. So as you can see underneath, I have actually cut that corner off, and now I'm going to lay this triangle on there, just centering it on that corner, and I'm going to sew 1/4 inch, and then when I fold it, it will fill out that corner.
And it'll be perfect, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I don't have any trouble.
Yeah.
If you're worried about
it's more like you need to potentially, if it ends up being a little bit too big, you might need to trim it or something. So
yeah, if you're not exact, you might have to retrim that corner. I would say if you're worried about that, then sew a scant 1/4 inch seam on that, and then you definitely will have enough and you can trim it. Because these blocks now, these pieces are the size, we don't have any extra on them.
Yeah, no trimming after this.
Okay, so we're going to have you do all of your 4 flippy corners, and we'll come back with 4 pieces that are now will be ready for final assembly.
Right.
Okay, so if you haven't already added your corners, I did forget to mention on the last one, after you cut off, if you're doing my method and you cut off the corner, you can use that piece you cut off and as a template on the other ones, so you don't have to keep remeasuring it. And I'm looking at what mats we have up here. So when I was showing Shelley my method, I want to show you. So on most cutting mats, and I will hesitate and say most mat makers say do not rely on the mat for complete accuracy, not like your rulers, okay? But for this little part, let's say it's accurate enough. And what I do is I actually take and I lay my, I find a 1/2 inch in the corner of my mat, and I lay my block, so it would be before, say I was going to put a corner on this one, and I would line that up right here, so it's a 1/2 inch over, and then I lay the corner I'm putting on right on top of that, and then I know that's my guide of how to trim. Hopefully, so I lay the corner on, and then I lay a ruler on top of that, and I cut. So I use my mat. Now, that said, and me claiming they're not all that accurate, this method that I do is not going to give you perfectly matched points. It's still
right.
It's still kind of a rough guess.
If nothing else, it has to do with how you lay it on there.
Because you have to, because number one, it's a rectangle, so you can't go by the angle of anything on there. It's not a square. So when you measure up those sides, you know, you have to very accurately put it in the corner, sew a 1/4 inch seam, you know, all that. Anyway,
Yeah.
so that said, Shelley has an example of one of hers.
Yeah.
And they will need to be trimmed afterwards. So you know, stick it under your 6.5 inch ruler. You really should have a 6.5 inch square at the end. If you don't, you know how to compensate. Skimp your seams. Okay.
Yeah.
So now, if for some reason you do my method and you cut off too much corner, Shelley pointed out, just cut a bigger piece of focus fabric. You know, you just need to fill in that corner with a triangle of fabric.
Right.
And not to pick on Shelley, but hers is a good example. You can see her pieces in the center. She's got some that are different sizes.
Yeah.
We're not looking for perfection here.
Yeah.
Number one, if you're looking for perfection, you've come to the wrong block of the month.
That's right. We're improving.
Yeah. And improving doesn't mean shoddy work.
Right.
It just means we don't in our case, it means we don't particularly care that much about them meeting up exactly. And don't think you have to redo anything. If you cut it too big, just kind of do the same thing on all four. You know, if your center's a little bigger or a little smaller,
that doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Okay, so Shelley's got to trim. I know she's trimmed some of hers, but basically our next step is we're gonna line them up like you could see in the finished block, and we're gonna sew 2 together, and then and in this case, press open or press to one side, your choice. If it looks lumpy, press open, and then do the other half and sew those together, and we'll come back with a finished block.
That should be 12.5 by 12.5.
Yeah, you should not need to trim this. So if you're worried that your sub blocks are a little small right now, just do a little skimpier seam.
Right.
I'm trying to think, have I forgotten anything? I know we have lots of words of wisdom to share, but I think we're out of it right now.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll come back with our finished block. All right, so we have our finished blocks here. They look pretty good.
Yep.
Not perfect, but pretty darn good. That's our motto.
Well, you know, it's quilting.
That's right.
It's sewing. It's not perfection.
I know, and once you make the quilt and
quilt it,
it's hard to even tell some of the stuff. You can't even see it. Don't worry so much. How many of your quilts are you going to enter into a contest anyway? For us?
None.
That'd be none.
None.
Okay, so only thing I wanted to mention for Guild members, this is our July block, and July for the Valley of the Mist Quilt Guild is our Quilt University, and we have 4 or 5, I can't remember if it's 5, very good new teachers lined up this year. So hope to see you at the meeting. All right, see you next month.